Hey everyone, I'm working to hit 1,000 subscribers and I need your help to get there. If you enjoy this content, please hit that subscribe button right now.
Elephant in the room.
The reality is that the bears have to express themselves about what it is that they want.
Governor Pritzker referencing a bill passed in the House and a different bill passed in the Senate, saying that the Bears now need to make it clear what it is in those two bills that the organization needs in order to build a stadium in Illinois. While the Bears say they're advancing stadium development in Hammond, Indiana, Governor Pritzker says he remains open to a special legislative session this summer if an agreement can be reached with the team. And in the meantime,
What, did I just watch? Did the governor of the state of Illinois, one of the most powerful political figures in the entire Midwest, just go on camera and basically tell the Chicago Bears, hey, just tell me what you want and I'll make it happen? Did J.B. Pritzker just pull the most unexpected chess move in the entire stadium saga and flip the script on everybody watching? Because I have been covering this Bears relocation drama for months now, and I have never seen this man come out sounding like he's taking orders from Halas Hall. But here we are, ladies and gentlemen. Here we are. What is going on, everybody? It is your boy, AJ LaMaestro, coming at you live and unfiltered from Chicago Bears Hub. The only place on the internet where we give you the Bears news with absolutely zero filter, zero sugarcoating, and zero patience for political games. And today we are diving deep into what might be the single biggest shift in the entire Chicago Bears stadium saga since this whole thing began. Because something changed in Springfield. Something changed in the governor's mansion. And whether you think J.B. Pritzker is playing chess or just finally waking up from a long nap, the words that came out of his mouth this week need to be broken down, dissected, and talked about, because they matter more than anything we have heard in a very long time. Let me set the stage for you. Illinois just passed their latest budget, and in the wake of that, reporters got J.B. Pritzker on record talking about the Bears situation. Now for months, every time this man opened his mouth about the Bears, it was the same script. Protecting taxpayers. No public money for billionaires. I'm not doing what Indiana is doing. And look, I respect the principle. I genuinely do. But there was always this energy of we'll see what happens, almost like the governor was content to let Indiana take a run at this thing while he sat back and played defense. That was the vibe. That was the frequency we were getting out of Springfield for a long time. But this week was completely different. And in my own personal opinion, this might be the most important statement J.B. Pritzker has made since this whole saga kicked off. Because instead of defaulting to the taxpayer protection talking points, he came out and said, and I want you to really hear the same man who was talking in February. That is a man who has looked at the Indiana situation, looked at the clock, and decided it's time to stop playing prevent defense and start going on offense. Now, before we go any further, I need to address the February statement versus the June statement because this contrast is critical to understanding where we actually are. As reported by multiple outlets covering the Bears Stadium story, back in February, the governor's statement was very specific. It was focused on Wolf Point. A concrete location, a concrete conversation. But the statement that dropped in June? It was much more generic. Suddenly, it was about sites. Plural. Which tells you one of two things. Either the Bears genuinely are still keeping all their options open and haven't committed to a location in Illinois, or there has been a tactical retreat on specificity while a broader deal framework gets negotiated behind closed doors. And in my own personal opinion, I think it's the second one. I think there are conversations happening at a level we don't have full visibility on, and the public-facing language got deliberately vague to give everyone room to maneuver. But here's what I know for certain, and this is where I'm going to spend a lot of time today. Because the Indiana situation is being sold to the public as a done deal, and it is absolutely, positively not a done deal. Not even close. People online, people in Indiana, Bears fans who have given up on Illinois, they're out here acting like the Colts' neighbors are already fitting Kevin Warren for a crown. And I need to pump the brakes hard on that narrative right now, because when you look at what is actually happening on the ground in Indiana, it is nowhere near as advanced as the headlines suggest.
Plan to keep the Bears in
Let's start with Lost Marsh, which, as reported by NBC5 Chicago, is one of the sites the Bears have been reviewing in Indiana.
A priority.
And here is where it gets really interesting. Environmental and permitting records have been reviewed, and what they show is that the Bears may not have nearly as much developable land at that site as originally advertised.
I'm happy to see what the Bears are putting in.
There is a permit from the United States Army Corps of Engineers that calls for a 50-year easement on two large portions of that land. 50 years. That means significant chunks of the Lost Marsh site cannot be developed until the 2050s. Do you understand what that means? Kevin Warren, who has made it crystal clear that he wants this stadium built and operational on an aggressive timeline, would be looking at a site where major portions of the property are legally off limits for development for decades. That's not a minor footnote. That is a fundamental problem that shrinks the viable footprint down to essentially a golf course and whatever surrounds it. And here's the part that should really make Indiana fans and Bears to Indiana believers pay close attention. As of the time this information came out, the Indiana Department of Environmental Management had not received a single permit application related to the Lake George and Lost Marsh golf course area.
Take that as a badge of honor.
That's important for me is being able to
They haven't even formally applied to look at the environmental situation. That's how far behind Indiana actually is in the process. In my own personal opinion, the Indiana push has been phenomenal at generating headlines and political momentum, but when you pull back the curtain and look at the actual infrastructure of the deal, the actual permitting, the actual site readiness, it's nowhere near what Arlington Heights represents right now. Because let's talk about what the Bears already have at Arlington Heights, because this doesn't get discussed enough. According to everything that has been reported out of the Bears' own camp and through coverage from outlets tracking the stadium situation, the traffic studies for Arlington Heights are done. The environmental approvals for Arlington Heights are done. The full rendering of the entire 326-acre development, where the stadium goes, where the parking goes, where the mixed-use development goes, all of it is completed and ready. That is years of groundwork already laid. That is an asset that you simply cannot replicate overnight in Hammond, Indiana, or anywhere else in the Hoosier State, no matter how enthusiastic your state legislature is about getting a franchise. Now, Indiana did pass a bill. I want to be fair here. They did pass legislation to fund a stadium. But here's the thing, and this is a critical distinction. Passing a bill to fund something and actually having the funding mechanism figured out are two completely different things. As reported in coverage of the Indiana legislation, they have until June of 2027 to determine exactly where that funding is coming from. The specific taxes, the specific mechanisms, the specific numbers, all of that still needs to be worked out. So Indiana has essentially passed a promise. A very enthusiastic, very well-intentioned promise. But the details that matter most are still being written. And in the world of stadium deals, the details are everything. Now let's get to the good stuff, because this is where I genuinely got excited this week, and I want to share that energy with you. There is a new bill that has been proposed in Illinois, and it comes from Representative Martin McLaughlin, and it is House Bill 5797. And when I read through what CBS News reported about the details of this bill, my jaw dropped a little bit, because this is the bill that actually makes sense. This is the proposal that, if it moves forward, could be the framework that gets this deal done and keeps the Chicago Bears in Illinois. Here's how it breaks down. The Bears would be allowed to spend up to $2.5 billion to build the stadium, and they would own it outright. Right away. Not in 30 years after some complicated buyback scheme. They own it from day one. The state of Illinois would contribute $1.2 billion toward infrastructure, roads, transit connections, utilities, all the stuff that makes a development of that scale actually function. Now, that's more than what was originally on the table, but stay with me, because the way the bill is structured actually protects taxpayers in a way that Indiana's approach simply doesn't. There is no pilot program, no payment in lieu of taxes arrangement that lets the Bears avoid contributing to the local tax base. Instead, the bill would establish a set property value for the stadium site that increases by 2.5% every single year over a 30-year span. That means the Bears are contributing to Illinois tax revenue, and that contribution grows every year. And on top of that, according to reporting from Capital News, Illinois, the bill includes an oversight committee specifically designed to ensure that local governments cannot shift any additional tax burden onto other residents and businesses in the surrounding area. There's an annual audit built into the structure. Every year, the books get checked. Every year, accountability is enforced. It's a business deal with teeth, not a handshake and a prayer. And in my own personal opinion, this is exactly what J.B. Pritzker has been asking for this entire time, even if he didn't know it yet. Because everything this governor has staked his political credibility on in this fight, no tax hikes, no toll increases, no shifting the burden onto working families, this bill honors all of that. It came from a different party than Pritzker, which is actually kind of beautiful in a weird way, because it shows that this isn't a partisan issue. When it comes to keeping the Bears in Illinois, people on both sides of the aisle are willing to work together to get something done. And Pritzker himself essentially confirmed his openness to this kind of framework when he said, and I'm paraphrasing from his public statement, that he would be happy to call a special legislative session if it becomes necessary to get this done. He also noted that the leaders of the legislature can call a special session as well. That is a man who is not content to let this die on the vine. That is a governor who, when you strip away the political posturing, wants this to work. Now let me give you my honest, unfiltered take on the whole chess match here, because I think J.B. Pritzker has actually been playing this smarter than most people gave him credit for. By staying disciplined on the taxpayer protection message, he forced Indiana's hand. Indiana came in hot, offering everything under the sun, and what happened? They passed a bill that still needs major components figured out. They're proposing sites that have 50-year easements on Army Corps of Engineers land. They're generating headlines without the substance to back them up yet. And now, with the clock ticking, with the reality of Indiana's challenges becoming more visible by the week, Pritzker can come forward as the reasonable partner. The guy who says, "Tell me what you need, Bears. Let's build something that works for everybody." That is a strong position to negotiate from. That is leverage. The question that I keep coming back to, and I want you guys to really think about this and drop your thoughts in the comments, is whether Kevin Warren is going to pick up the phone and have that direct conversation with the governor. Because based on Pritzker's public statements, that call hasn't happened in a substantive way yet. The Bears have thoughts, as the governor put it, but they haven't laid out a specific bill, a specific ask, a specific framework that they need to see in order to make Illinois the choice. And until that happens, until Kevin Warren sits across from J.B. Pritzker and says this is exactly what we need, we are going to keep spinning in this cycle of statements and counterstatements and proposals and counterproposals. In my own personal opinion, the ball is now firmly in the Bears' court. And I mean that literally. Pritzker has essentially said, publicly, on the record, "I'm listening." The legislature has a new bill on the table that protects taxpayers and gives the Bears significant ownership benefits. Arlington Heights is ready from an environmental and traffic standpoint in ways that Indiana simply isn't. The infrastructure pathway exists. The political will, at least on the surface, appears to be emerging. So what is Kevin Warren waiting for? Now I know some of you are going to say, AJ, you've been saying it's going to work out for months and it still hasn't happened. And you know what? That's fair. That's a completely fair criticism. This saga has tested everybody's patience. It has tested mine. There have been moments where I genuinely thought Indiana was going to close the deal. But every time I dig into the actual specifics, the land issues, the environmental permits, the tax structures, the timeline realities, Illinois keeps coming out ahead on substance even when Indiana wins on headlines. And right now, with House Bill 5797 on the table, with a governor publicly asking the Bears to tell him what they want, with Arlington Heights years ahead of any Indiana site in terms of actual development readiness, the window for Illinois to close this deal is wide open. And in my own personal opinion, if the Bears don't walk through that window in the next few months, that will be one of the most shocking and baffling decisions in Chicago sports history. I'll leave you with this. The communities around Arlington Heights need this. The school systems that took a hit when the racetrack closed, they need the economic revival that a world-class stadium development brings. The workers, the small businesses, the restaurants and shops that would serve a 326-acre mixed-use entertainment district, they need this. Illinois needs this. And if you're a Bears fan anywhere in the world, you need to be making noise right now. Call your state senators. Call your representatives. Tell them that House Bill 5797 makes sense. That this is the framework that works. That the Bears belong in Illinois, and it is time to get this done. Look, at the end of the day, we're talking about one of the most iconic franchises in the history of professional football. The Chicago Bears do not belong in Indiana. They belong in Illinois. They belong in the community that has bled navy and orange for over 100 years. And right now, the opportunity to make that permanent is sitting right there on the table in Springfield. Don't blow it. All right, that is going to do it for today's episode here on Chicago Bears Hub. I am AJ LaMaestro, and I need you to do me a favor right now. If this breakdown brought you value, if you learned something today, if you're fired up about keeping the Bears in Illinois, smash that like button right now. Drop a comment below and tell me, do you trust JB Pritzker to get this deal done? Do you think Kevin Warren is going to make the call? Let me know. I read every single one. And if you are not subscribed to Chicago Bears Hub yet, what are you even doing? Hit that subscribe button and turn on your notifications because we are covering this story every single step of the way with no filter and no games. Bear down Chicago.
Hey everyone, I'm working to hit 1,000 subscribers and I need your help to get there. If you enjoy this content, please hit that subscribe button right now.